Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive here on the Nepalese Diaspora Network podcast. As always, we are your one-stop shop with the latest news, views, and insights, for the global Nepalese diaspora.
That's right. We're here to bring you the most relevant updates and connect with you wherever you are in the world.
Exactly. And for today's deep dive, we're going to be focusing on, some of the most significant events that have been making headlines recently in Nepal. We're taking our cues from the latest edition of our Nepali Diaspora Digest newsletter. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to that for all the in-depth analysis and commentary. But yeah, in this episode, we'll try to condense it all for you.
We'll be looking at the recent political unrest that's been gripping the nation, and then we'll delve into some critical updates on the economic front. And of course, we'll also be covering some news that directly impacts our diaspora community around the world.
Yep. So it's going to be a packed episode, but we'll make sure to keep it concise and insightful. We're aiming for about 20 minutes just to give you the most important information without taking up too much of your time.
Sounds good to me. So let's jump right in. I think the best place to start is with those pro-monarchy demonstrations that took place in Tinkuni, Kathmandu. Those seem to have escalated pretty quickly.
Yeah, they definitely did. Reports are coming in of clashes between the protesters and the security forces, and unfortunately, it looks like the situation turned violent. Sadly, we're hearing reports of 2 deaths so far. There's a protester, Saban Maharjan, and a journalist, Suresh Rajak, who worked for Avenues TV. He died in a building fire that broke out during the unrest.
It's a tragic situation all around. And the damage goes beyond the loss of life, unfortunately. We're also getting reports of significant property damage, including cases of arson, looting, and just general vandalism.
Yeah, it seems like the Annapurna post office was targeted, as well as the building where the journalist, Suresh Rajak, lost his life. And there's been looting in the Papateni supermarket. So, it's affecting businesses and people's livelihoods as well.
It's a pretty widespread issue, too. It's not just limited to shops and commercial properties. It looks like both private and public property has been damaged. Media houses haven't been spared either. We're hearing about attacks on Kantipur Television, the Annapurna Media Network, and even a Himalayan TV van.
Yeah, it's concerning to see media outlets being targeted like this. And on top of that, offices belonging to the CPN Unified Socialist Political Party have been vandalized. And we're getting reports of damage to vehicles, both government-owned and private.
And I think it's really telling that the authorities felt the need to impose a curfew, even if it was a brief one, in the Tinkun area.
Yeah,
It shows how seriously they were taking the situation.
definitely. So how has the government responded to all of this so far? I know the Nepali Congress has been pretty vocal.
Well, they've come out and directly blamed former King Gyanendra for the unrest. It's a pretty big accusation, holding him responsible for instigating all of this.
That is a serious claim. And it looks like other groups are joining the call for action. I've seen reports that various political parties and human rights organizations are demanding thorough investigations into the violence. They're also pushing for legal action against anyone found to be responsible.
Yeah, accountability is definitely going to be a big focus here. And Home Minister Ramesh Lekhak has weighed in as well, specifically condemning the attacks on media outlets. He's promised that the government will take action to bring those responsible to justice.
I mean, it's crucial to protect freedom of the press, right?
Yeah.
These attacks are a worrying sign.
Absolutely. And it seems like the authorities are already starting to take some concrete steps. For example, the Kathmandu metropolitan city has slapped former King Gyanendra with a pretty hefty fine, over 793,000 Nepalese rupees, for environmental damage and property destruction linked to the protests.
Wow, that's not a small amount. So it seems they're trying to hit him where it hurts financially.
Yeah, it could be a way to send a message. And it looks like they might not be stopping there. There's talk about potentially revoking his state privileges and even his passport. They've also downsized his security team quite significantly from 26 members to 16. It definitely seems like they're trying to put pressure on him.
So there's been a lot of talk about who organized these protests. Has there been any progress in identifying them?
Well, there have been a number of arrests. Some of those arrested are senior figures from the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party, like Rabindra Mishra and Dawal Samsharana. They've also arrested other prominent pro-monarchy activists, individuals like Swagat Nepal, Shepherd Limbu, and Santosh Damang. It seems like the authorities are going after some high-profile figures.
And what about Durga Prasad, the guy who's been identified as a key organizer? I heard he's still on the run.
Yeah, reports suggest that he's at large. They haven't managed to apprehend him yet.
So what do you make of all of this? Is this a sign of deep-rooted dissatisfaction with the current political system? Or is this just a fringe movement trying to stir up trouble?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Hmm.
It's hard to say definitively. It's clear that there are some segments of the population who are unhappy with the way things are, but it's difficult to gauge just how widespread that sentiment truly is.
It's a complex issue for sure. And I think it's important to remember that Nepal has made significant progress in terms of democracy over the past few years. It's understandable that many people would be hesitant to go back to the old ways.
Absolutely. And it's worth noting that the RPP, the party some of the arrested leaders belong to, has issued a pretty strong statement. They've given the government a 24-hour ultimatum to release their members, or they're threatening to launch nationwide
Oh,
protests.
wow. So things could potentially escalate even further. That doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't. And just to add to the intrigue, Kamal Sampa, the chair of RPP Nepal, has met with the detained RPP leaders to express his support. So it's clear that this is causing quite a stir within the political landscape.
Yeah, the fallout from this is going to be interesting to watch. Have other groups and organizations spoken out about the violence?
Oh, absolutely. We've seen statements of condemnation from organizations like the Democratic Thought Society, the Nepal Chamber of Commerce, and the Human Rights and Peace Society. They're emphasizing the threat that these protests pose to democracy and the economy. They're basically saying that this kind of unrest is bad for everyone.
It makes sense. Stability is crucial for both political and economic progress.
Exactly. To give you an idea of the scale of the police response so far, over 111 people have been arrested in connection with the riots.
That's quite a lot of arrests. It seems like they're trying to send a strong message.
They are, and the government has announced that they're going to be holding an all-party meeting to discuss the situation and hopefully find a way to move forward.
That's encouraging. Dialogue is always a good step in these situations.
It is, and I think it's also interesting to see how social media is playing a role in all of this. There's a hashtag campaign going around that's specifically calling out former King Gyanendra, holding him accountable for the violence.
Yeah, social media can be a powerful tool for spreading awareness and mobilizing people. So with all this going on, what are the different political parties saying? I imagine there's some pretty strong opinions out there.
There are, as you'd expect. The Nepali Congress and the CPN Maoist Center are both pointing fingers at the former king, saying he needs to be held responsible and face consequences for his actions. But then you have the RPP who are challenging the government to actually go ahead and arrest him if they believe he's the one to blame.
So a lot of finger pointing and not much agreement, as usual.
Pretty much. And then there's the Federation of Nepalese Journalists, the FNJ. They've been holding protests over the death of journalist Suresh Rajak, demanding justice and a thorough investigation.
It's a reminder that journalists often put themselves at risk to report on these kinds of events. Their safety is paramount, especially in times of unrest like this.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's move on from the political drama for now. There's been some news on the economic front as well, right?
Yeah, some new figures have been released regarding Nepal's economic growth.
Oh, okay, and what are they saying?
Well, it seems that the economy grew by 5.1% in the second quarter of the fiscal year 2024-25.
That's not bad. Which sectors were the main drivers of this growth?
It looks like transportation, construction, and agriculture played a big role. Transportation saw a significant increase of 14.2%, construction grew by 9.1%, and agriculture saw a 3.2% expansion. And it seems like the gains in agriculture were mainly due to better rice and fruit production.
So those sectors are doing quite well. What about the others? Were there any that didn't perform so well?
Well, it seems like the housing and education sectors saw very limited growth, maybe even a slight contraction in the second quarter.
I see. So some areas are definitely performing better than others.
That's right. And there's also been an update on the number of taxpayers in Nepal. The number of people and entities holding permanent account numbers, those PAN numbers, has now crossed 6.65 million.
So that means more people are contributing to the tax system, right?
In theory, yes. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the government is raking in the cash. Even with more taxpayers, revenue collection is still falling short of the government's targets.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
How much are they missing out on?
It seems like they're facing a budget deficit of over 132 billion Nepalese rupees. That's a pretty significant gap.
It is. And what are the implications of this? What could this mean for the economy going forward?
Well, a deficit like that could put a strain on government spending and make it harder to implement development plans. It's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Okay. And what about the long-term economic outlook for Nepal? Are there any major concerns on the horizon?
The World Bank has actually issued a warning about the potential for long-term economic stagnation. They're saying that without major reforms in areas like infrastructure, private sector development, and labor productivity, Nepal's economic growth could stall out at around 4%.
So basically, they're saying that Nepal needs to step up its game if it wants to achieve sustainable growth.
Exactly. And there are some more immediate challenges as well. The power shortages, for example, are having a really negative impact on industries. We're talking about load shedding for up to 12 hours a day in some industrial areas.
Wow, that's a lot. What kind of impact is this having on businesses?
Well, industrial production has apparently dropped by over 50%, and costs are going up for energy-intensive industries like steel and cement. It's making it very difficult for them to operate.
It sounds like a pretty dire situation. But
Yep.
I think there was some good news about the World Bank providing funding for infrastructure projects, right?
Yeah, there is some positive news on that front. The World Bank has approved a $150 million financing package for the third Bridges Improvement and Maintenance Program. The goal is to make bridges across Nepal more resilient to the impacts of climate change.
That sounds like a crucial investment, especially with all the environmental challenges that Nepal is facing.
It is. Speaking of environmental challenges, there's been a lot of talk about the rapid rate of glacial retreat in the Himalayas.
Yeah, that's a worrying trend. What kind of impact could this have on Nepal in the long run?
Well, it could have serious implications for water resources, hydropower generation, and food security. The melting glaciers are a major source of water for the region, and they also play a critical role in regulating the flow of rivers. If they disappear, it could have a devastating impact on agriculture and the overall ecosystem.
So it's a problem that needs to be addressed urgently.
For sure. And before we move on to diaspora news, I thought I'd share a fascinating little tidbit about Nepal's economy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
Did you know that Nepal's informal economy accounts for a whopping 41% of its GDP?
Wow, that's a huge portion of the economy. What does that actually mean?
Well, it means that a large chunk of economic activity is happening outside of the formal, regulated sector. It's everything from street vendors to small-scale businesses that operate without official registration.
I see. So it's a significant part of the economic landscape, but it also presents some challenges, right?
Exactly. It can make it difficult to collect taxes, enforce regulations, and ensure that workers are protected.
It sounds like a complex issue with no easy solutions.
It definitely is. But anyway, let's shift gears now and talk about some news that's specifically relevant to the Nepalese diaspora.
Sounds good. What have you got for us?
Well, there were some interesting discussions at the NRNA's 16th Europe Regional Conference, which was held in Malta recently.
Oh, right. I remember hearing about that. What were some of the key takeaways?
Well, one of the main points of discussion was the need for clearer laws and provisions for constitutional citizenship to encourage more investment from the diaspora.
That makes sense. People need to feel confident that their investments will be protected.
Absolutely. And there are also calls for greater political stability. Investors need to know that the rules of the game aren't going to change overnight.
I imagine there are some significant bureaucratic hurdles that need to be overcome as well.
There are. But Industry Minister Potterai, who was at the conference, acknowledged these challenges and said that he's committed to working with the Prime Minister to address them.
Well, that's encouraging. Hopefully they can make some real progress on that front.
We'll have to wait and see. But there was also some news about some internal tensions within the NRNA itself.
Oh, really? What's going on there?
It seems like there are two factions within the organization that are at odds with each other. There's a high-level committee led by Shish Gill that was formed by a Supreme Court directive, and they've issued a warning about another group that's been organizing parallel programs and activities.
So there's some infighting going on. That's not ideal.
No, it isn't. And the committee has actually warned that the NRNA could be dissolved if a unification convention isn't held by mid-May.
So it sounds like there are some serious challenges that need to be resolved.
There are. But on a more positive note, there's been some good news about trade and cultural exchange initiatives with China.
Oh, that's interesting. What's happening there?
Well, the Sichuan-Nepal Trade Exchange Month has just kicked off in Chengdu, China.
And what's the goal of this initiative?
It's all about strengthening ties between Nepal and Sichuan province. They're looking to boost trade, promote tourism, enhance cultural exchanges, and build people-to-people connections.
So it sounds like a comprehensive effort to build stronger relations.
It does. And it looks like they're putting a lot of effort into it. They're showcasing Nepali products, holding exhibitions, and organizing various cultural activities.
That's great to hear. And finally, I think we had a story about some individuals who were deported from the U.S., right?
We did. It's a rather complex situation, actually.
Okay, fill us in.
So 10 individuals of Bhutanese origin were deported from the U.S. due to criminal activity. But when they were sent back to Bhutan, the Bhutanese authorities refused to let them in.
Wow, so they were essentially stateless.
Yeah, pretty much. And to make matters worse, they were then sent to Nepal.
So now they're stuck in limbo.
It seems so. And this has raised some serious legal and human rights concerns. It's unclear what their status is or what will happen to them.
Where are they now?
3 of them were apprehended in the Beldanji refugee camp in Nepal, but the other 7 are reportedly in hiding.
And what about the governments of Bhutan and Nepal? Are they doing anything to help these individuals?
So far, neither country seems to be taking responsibility for them. Refugee rights advocates are understandably concerned about their well-being and their future. It's a very unfortunate situation.
It is, and it highlights the complexities of immigration and deportation policies. Well, that was quite a rundown of events. It's been a busy week for Nepal, to say the least, with all the political unrest, economic news, and diaspora-related developments.
It has, and it's clear that there are some significant challenges ahead, both for the country itself and for the Nepalese diaspora around the world.
Absolutely. But before we wrap up, I wanted to quickly mention a great resource for our listeners in the UK. Have you heard of balayat.uk?
I have. It's a fantastic website for the Nepalese community in the UK.
Exactly. It's a classified site where you can find everything from job listings and housing options to community events and Nepalese-owned businesses. It's a really useful platform for connecting with other Nepalese people and finding essential services.
It is. And if you're looking for more in-depth information on all the topics we've discussed today, be sure to visit nepalidiaspora.net. You'll find a wealth of resources and news updates there, as well as ways to connect with the global Nepalese community.
So, as we conclude this deep dive, it leaves us with a lot to think about. Nepal is at a crossroads, facing both opportunities and challenges, and the role of the diaspora in shaping the country's future is more important than ever. As Nepal navigates these turbulent times and strives for a brighter future, we encourage you to stay engaged, stay informed, and stay connected.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive, but until then, thank you for joining us.
And take care.